Meanwhile, Joe Biden headed down to Florida to visit hurricane damage. So, as I've said 1,000 times, I hate when presidents do this. I don't care who the president is. I think the idea of a president going and visiting a damaged site via natural disaster is completely useless. It shuts down the area for a significant period of time. It prevents help from getting in at that time because the president has to get a photo op. I'm not sure how it's helpful. I've never seen a situation in which the president had to be like, what's the president going to do? This is not unique to Biden. Okay, Trump used to do it too. So did Obama, so did Bush. Like this idea the president's going to get out there and he's going to have both his hands on like a piece of boat and he's just going to be shoving it over here and saving the world. It's very silly to me. In any case, Joe Biden arrives in Florida and he hangs out with Ron DeSantis. By hangs out, I mean, he did what people typically do in this situation. The governor of the state is there. The president is there. They greet each other cordially. And then the president speaks and Ron DeSantis speaks. Okay, well, one thing that I will say Ron DeSantis did not do is the Chris Christie bro hug with Barack Obama, in which he pretended that Barack Obama was coming in to save the state of New Jersey, which of course was really, really silly. Apparently, President Biden said he was in complete lockstep with Governor Ron DeSantis during a visit to Southwest Florida. According to the New York Times, this amounts to a moment of détente. But what this really shows, and this has been pretty clear since Hurricane Ian, if DeSantis were botching, the response would be at the top of every newspaper in America all day long, which means, because we're not hearing about it, that DeSantis is doing a really good job. Right? I mean, that's what's actually happening right here. And the fact that Joe Biden is even admitting that DeSantis is doing a good job is fairly telling here. So here was Joe Biden yesterday praising Ron DeSantis for doing a good job presiding over his state in the worst natural disaster that's hit the state in probably a decade and a half.
Dr. Biden, I think he's done a good job. Look, I called him, I think he before he called me when I heard we work hand in glove. We have very different political philosophies. But we've worked hand in glove, and he's been on TV leading and dealing with this crisis. We've been completely lockstep, but no difference.
Biden said, quote, "We have very different political philosophies, but we've worked hand in glove in dealing with this crisis. We've been in lockstep," which, again, good for him to say, good that it's true. Also very obvious that DeSantis is doing a good job, because if Biden had the opportunity to stomp all over Ron DeSantis, a potential 2024 rival for the presidency, he absolutely would have done it. Meanwhile, the president of the United States continues to say some things that nobody understands. I mean, he'll spill things out of his face hole and no one knows what he's talking about. So, for example, Joe Biden bragged about how he has personal experience with home disasters because at one point his home was hit by lightning. The actual story, according to the Associated Press, is that in 2004, Joe Biden's home was hit by lightning. There was a brief kitchen fire for about 20 minutes and it was put out. I don't think that's on the level of your home being literally washed away if you were on Sanibel Island or something. But you know, Joe Biden always has a personal experience to call upon. Most of them are not true. Here's Joe Biden.
I know from experience how much anxiety and fear and concern there are in the people. We didn't lose our whole home, but lightning struck and we lost an awful lot of it about 15 years ago.
Lightning struck and I said, my dad said, "Joey, you see that lightning over there? It's going to strike your kitchen."
Okay, so a few years back, when I was newly married, I was at my parents' house one day, and I decided that I was going to make myself a frying pan of scrambled eggs. My parents had an old-fashioned gas stove, and the pilot light didn't work, so I took a match, and I used it to light the old-fashioned gas stove. I blew out the match. It was out. I threw it in the garbage can. I left the room. A few minutes later, I saw smoke in the house. I ran back into the house, and what I saw was that the kitchen garbage can was completely on fire because apparently there was still a spark in that match, and it lit all of the plastic on fire. So giant flames coming out there. So I take I take the sink, right? I take the faucet from the sink. It's one of those hoses that comes out the sink, and I'm like, I will solve this problem. And so I start firing it at the kitchen fire. And it goes like this. Pew! It just kind of it stops about 4 feet short of the actual trash can. That's on fire. The smoke is going everywhere. I run into my parents' pantry looking for some sort of bowl or something to throw water. All I can come up with is like the top of a cake dish. So I fill it with water. I put out the fire. I look, and there it was. There was a mark on my parents' kitchen floor, which I promptly hid with a new kitchen trash can, which that lasted for, I don't know, a couple of days until they realized what was going on. I called my wife on the phone at the time. She was laughing really, really hard at me. My parents apparently were right behind her on the freeway. And so she couldn't get over to help. And I was yelling at her that she needed to speed up so she could get home to help. It was just like that, the hurricane. It was just the same thing, according to Joe Biden. They're all the same. All small home fires are exactly the same thing as your home being washed away. Oh, my God, this one. Well, Joe Biden also suggested that if there's one thing that Hurricane Ian settled, it was the debate over global warming, which absolutely it did not settle because, again, the data do not exist suggesting that hurricanes have become either more common or higher level because of global warming over the course of the last 30, 40, 50 years. Here's Joe Biden saying precisely the opposite.
Colorado River looks more like a stream. There's a lot going on. And I think the one thing this has finally ended is a discussion about whether or not there's climate change and we should do something about it. But folks, I also want to, Jill and I have had you all in our prayers.
Yeah, he's a delight. Meanwhile, he also met with one of the mayors in Florida and dropped the line, "Nobody F's with a Biden," which I don't. Apparently, there was no context to this. He just sort of blurted it randomly. So yeah, he's doing an amazing job. Is I guess what we're saying here.
By the way, you read some, no one.
Good times. Good times. Yeah, it's very funny. Yeah, Breitbart put out a movie called My Son Hunter about Joe Biden. It's a kind of half parodic movie about Joe Biden. And this is one of the lines that he uses in the movie. And it's supposed everybody's laughing at it. Like Joe would never say anything like that, except he says stuff like that all the time, actually, as it turns out. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis, again, doing a really good job over in Florida of handling this hurricane. So he talks about how illegal immigrant looters should be sent back to their home countries. Again, this is fairly popular stuff with the American public, I would think.
We've had 4 looters that were arrested, I guess a couple days ago, and they need to be brought to justice, and we're not going to tolerate it. But, 3 of the 4 are illegal aliens. And so these are people that are foreigners. They're illegally in our country. And not only that, they try to loot and ransack in the aftermath of a natural disaster. I mean, they should be prosecuted, but they need to be sent back to their home country. They should not be here at all.
Again, and people on the left feel very insulted by this sort of stuff, but I fail to see anything that is remotely controversial about this. First of all, if you commit any crime and you're an illegal immigrant, you should be sent to your home country. If you're looting during a hurricane, I would imagine that the same should apply. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis makes the absolutely inarguable point that if this hurricane had hit Tampa, the media would have been happier because they would have had more pictures of disaster to show and more things to blame on him because, of course, this is true. The media have been searching for some sort of angle to blame Ron DeSantis for. The one that they came up with, a dog that didn't hunt, is that only 21 hours in advance of the hurricane hitting Fort Myers, he told people they had to get out of Fort Myers. There's only one problem with that, which then none of the networks said that people should get out of Fort Myers because that's not where the cone was. So here's Ron DeSantis pointing out this obvious truth.
Everyone that I've talked to on the ground when we're delivering supplies, they're saying, I was watching the media. They told us Tampa. Yeah. That's why I didn't leave. I know people personally on the island. Is there going to be any accountability in the media?
Well, look, I mean, I think part of it, quite frankly, you have national regime media that they wanted to see Tampa because they thought that that'd be worse for Florida. That's how these people think. Yeah. I mean, they don't care about the people of this state. They don't care about the people of this community. They want to use storms and destruction from storms as a way to advance their agenda.
Of course, the governor of Florida is exactly right about this. So the fact that they've been able to come up with nearly nothing demonstrates that DeSantis is doing a good job, and they should be, in fact, pretty scared of him come 2024, especially if the heir for Joe Biden, if Joe Biden does not run, the heir apparent is Kamala Harris, who repeatedly has been announcing her love of Venn diagrams. That's an actual thing that she's been doing. I don't know why, but that lady really loves Venn diagrams.
I've actually asked my team to do a Venn diagram. I love Venn diagrams. I just love Venn diagrams. The 3 circles, right? Sometimes there are more.
Wow. Sometimes there are more, guys. Man, with people like this in power, I can't imagine why things are really going the wrong way. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll get into the Herschel Walker abortion story, how that's going to affect the Georgia race. We'll get into Rachel Maddow, who's sounding kind of insurrection-y these days. If you're not a member, click the link in the description and join us.